Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Powerless Podcast. In this episode, I talked to Kim Hunt, aka Slay the GOP, on social media, and we talk a lot about current events, whether it was Venezuela, current ICE abductions and assaults, and the total onslaught in Minneapolis. We talk about kind of the role that political influencers have. We talk a lot of the problems that some of the more grifty or some of the more basic liberal pundits and commentators and debaters have done as far as the political zeitgeist, and how it ultimately is not the end all be all that it seems. And a lot of it is spectacle and takes away the real fight of politics and values and the progressive movement, and funnels it into owns and funnels it into slop and funnels it into ultimately just supporting the Democratic Party at large, not holding people's feet to the fire, not coming at it from any real principle place or activism and things of that nature. Kim's great to talk to about this. She does a great job both eviscerating the right and holding the left accountable when it comes to integrity. So we talk all about that. It was great to have Kim on. I do have to say the end might be a little abrupt. Kim's connection just shot out. We were going pretty late. We had gotten through pretty much everything we wanted to get through, and I told her, instead of trying to jump back on and do all this stuff, we'll just cut it there. So I might come up with a little bit of an ending thing here for an outro as well. But you'll hear everything that Kim has to say on an array of different topics, from that to Gavin Newsom to a lot of other electoral things, as well as the current issues and how this pertain to people within the online political discourse and things of that nature. So big thanks to Kim for coming on. It's the second time she's been on. The first time she came on, her and I talked a lot about children within the system, children disappearing, especially from indigenous communities, how maybe parents' rights are considered above the rights of the children, what's best for the children in the United States, and a whole slew of that. So I definitely encourage everyone to go check that one out. This one's a lot more of a, discussion and shooting the shit a little bit about politics in general. But I do really appreciate Kim coming on. I always think she's someone who's really fantastic in this space on kind of like online political discourse that really holds people's feet to the fire and really talks at things from a principled progressive viewpoint. If you want to follow Kim on all social media at Slay the GOP. I believe she's on Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, I think Twitter, and I know Threads as well. So follow her. It's the same handle everywhere, and make sure to listen to the whole episode. I think you'll really enjoy it. Before we get into the episode, make sure you follow the podcast on all social media platforms at The Powerless Pod. You can find everything at thepowerlesspod.com, whether it's merch, Discord, finding us on social media, contacting me directly, which is also thepowerlesspod@gmail.com. I also check my DMs if you want to contact me there when it comes to booking things. I've talked to a lot of musicians. I talked to a lot of activists. I talked to political commentators. I talked to journalists. I talked to people all the way in Gaza to people in Europe all across. We had an episode with someone from Slovenia a while back. That was a great musician. So yeah, just make sure to hit me up there. I love to talk to people about music, about politics, about the world at large, and at times how they intertwine. So I really appreciate you checking all that stuff out. Before we get into the episode, though, Kim and I recorded this on Thursday night. I initially had been planning to put it out on Friday, but it was extremely cold. Didn't have the greatest internet access, I'll be honest, on Friday. My work was canceled because of how cold it was. So I decided I would release it on Saturday. This is coming out on Sunday. And Saturday morning, I get a message from our friend of the show, Hannah, who is in Minneapolis right now and going around documenting a bunch of things with the protests against ICE and ICE raids and everything in between. And she had texted me about 10 a.m. or so, I think, that another man had been executed in broad daylight by ICE in front of numerous cameras, in front of numerous people. And I went to check, and sure enough, I saw a video instantly of Alex Preddy being shot several times by ICE officers who had pinned him down with numerous people on top of him. They then claimed he was attempting to massacre ICE agents just because he had a legal gun in a holster in a state that allows both concealed and open carry. The video clearly shows them taking his gun out of his holster as he's pinned down in the fetal position before one of them stepping away, shooting him. They back away and then shoot him several more times as he's lying lifeless on the ground. The administration instantly went to painting him as a domestic terrorist, that the ICE agents were doing this in self-defense. But everyone in the world could see that they were lying through their teeth. Even this isn't even a situation like Renee Good, where someone's in a car going away and people get to have some fake discourse about, oh, he was afraid for his life and things of that nature, which was just complete bullshit to begin with. That was cold-blooded murder. We've seen that from the autopsy. But Alex Preddy was helping a woman up as he's getting pepper sprayed in the face. ICE agents knock him down, beat him with at least 5 or 6 of them on him, and then shoot him to death. This man was an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. You can watch videos of him giving sort of like almost like a eulogy to people that have passed away in his care in the ICU. You've seen footage of him doing his hobbies and what looks like hiking or climbing and things of that nature. You've heard nothing but positive things about this man from his family, from people in the community. And so it's just another instance of them trying to change reality. They want to make what they believe and what helps them out the best to paint everyone they kill as a terrorist, everyone they kill as an agitator, everyone they kill as some psycho, when they're the fucking psychos. So the last thing I want to end off with before we get into the episode with Kim is I'm going to read the statement from Alex's parents, Michael and Susan Preddy, that they put out. This is given via the People for Bernie. It says, quote, "We are heartbroken, but also very angry. Alex was a kind-hearted soul who cared deeply for his family and friends, and also the American veterans whom he cared for as an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. Alex wanted to make a difference in this world. Unfortunately, he will not be with us to see his impact. I do not throw around the hero term lightly. However, his last thought and act was to protect a woman. The sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. Alex is clearly not holding a gun when attacked by Trump's murdering and cowardly ICE thugs. He had his phone in his right hand, and his empty hand is raised above his head while trying to protect the woman ICE just pushed down, all while being pepper sprayed. Please get the truth out about our son. He was a good man. Thank you. More has to be done against these fucking people. That's all I can say. I don't know what else to say except for if you see ICE within your neighborhoods when they go to the place next, whether you're in Minneapolis, whether you're in Maine now where they're going, whether you're in Chicago where I'm sure they will step things up again, whether you're in Los Angeles, wherever you're at, it's going to come. They're already showing that they're escalating. They've got massive funding that is more than most militaries in the world. They have little to no training. Not that I think training would change much of this at all. Both of the people actually that have murdered both Renee Good and Alex Preddy have been within the service of the DHS for years. So all I can say is organize in your communities, arm yourselves, because people are saying don't do anything to escalate right now. Well, someone didn't get their gun out and was helping a woman and he still got shot, and they're still blaming him just because he had a firearm. So it's not going away. They're not going to not escalate. You need to be in solidarity with your community. We need to continue to pressure these people and show how much of an evil force they are to the world. And we need to stand up for people like Renee Good and Alex Preddy and the thousands and thousands of immigrants and migrants that have been detained, 6 of whom are officially told by the administration have died in detainment centers since January of 2026 started. One of those being strangled to death allegedly by guards, according to fellow detainees. All of these people deserve someone to stand up and say, we will not allow this to happen again. And that's got to be all of us. So I'll leave it with that. I wanted to make sure to go over that, as Kim and I did not get to before, because we recorded this before this all came out. But I just think it's an important thing to cover right now. It's the only thing that's been on my mind for the past 24 hours. So with that, we'll get into the episode with Kim Hunt, Slay the GOP, on the Powerless Podcast. Thank you so much. All right. Perfect. All right. I am here with Kim, aka Slay the GOP, who's a return guest. Last time, thankfully, in some ways, we're still talking about very serious issues today. But last time we talked, it was nice of you to come on and talk about a topic which is like children in the system and things of that nature. But today it'll be a little bit more of things in your wheelhouse of what people see from you on the internet a lot with your activism and things of that nature, which is both talking about real issues and also holding people accountable that are complete grifters, which is where you're like I feel like you're the best person I see on the internet doing that, because you just so calmly take these people down in like a very fun and like it seems like what's the word I'm looking, effortless way. So I'm happy to have you on. First and foremost, how are you? I probably just asked before we started recording.
In general,
how are you doing today?
I'm okay. I think with like the state of the world, it's kind of hard to act like everything's okay. Like with a 5-year-old being used as bait for ICE and then having him be detained like that. More journalists were killed in Israel. In Gaza because of Israel due to another airstrike. It's just hard to ignore the atrocities that are happening. So to say that I'm doing good would be incredibly tone deaf and quite honestly just not true.
Yeah. No, I know it's one of those. If I feel like it's been this way for a long time for us, but like especially the last, since 2023, I would say fall of 2023. It's always a loaded question when you ask anybody that. Like, this is what I wanted to do is I wanted to ask you about a few of your kind of get your perspective, because I know you've been talking about this a lot. You and I share a lot of the same opinions on these things, of some of the news of the day type things. Most of what you actually just brought up is what I had in my notes that I was going to ask you about today. And then kind of get into, because I think it all kind of meshes together of how much like there's these very like in this quote unquote independent news space, political commentator space, influencer, if you will, whatever space, that like, there's these very real, very very need to be talked about and elevated issues that go on that people might like reference somewhat. The Gaza, not at all, it seems like anymore, but and they kind of talk about it in a very like slop surface level manner that I think even on the liberal or left side of things ends up being very detrimental for the movement all in all. So this will all kind of like blend in together. But I did want to, the first thing that I was going to talk about, because I saw it first posted actually from Miss Rachel today when I was at work, of all things, talking about what you just brought up, which was, I believe he's 5 years old, Liam Ramos, who was abducted by ICE, seemingly just right off the street. You see him literally, like, I thought it was a Stitch hat, but I think it's some sort of Pokemon hat, or maybe I'm not into like the, like all the children's sort of like things that they would be into, that they'd wear a little fun hat when they're going to and coming from school. But just literally like this little child that is like the picture perfect of like a cute little kid leaving.
Right.
Like I've told you before, my day job as a teacher, seeing a kid like this being grabbed on their way home, and not just him, but it seems like other kids all from the same district. I think there was several of them that were taken. We saw another story that came out recently of what looks like a young girl with autism that ICE in Minneapolis was literally holding hostage to try to get her mom to come out of the house so they could abduct her, and they were like keeping them separated until the mom would come out. And I actually didn't see how that all unfolded. But first and foremost, what's been your take of everything that's been, or kind of your general consensus of what's been going on the ground in Minneapolis? Both from the protests and kind of response to this, and the administration's sort of like ever growing crackdown in here that just like totally seems like it's throwing all sense of law out the window. And then after that, kind of tell me what your kind of read is on why so many more mainstream people, they talk about ICE a lot. Like I was looking at some of the people we're going to talk about today. They'll talk about ICE and the horrific things they're doing, but they don't really like critique politicians when they're not meeting the moment, or they're not, that kind of sort of thing where you're talking about these topics, but you're not really holding people, maybe in your own camp as far as Democrats go, to the fire to make sure that they're actually doing what they
it's
can
sad
to
that
serve,
like your
their
average
constituents.
citizen is out there doing more work than the people that we voted to represent us. It's sad that there are people that are having to subject themselves to like negative temperatures outside for the sake of ensuring that people aren't getting abducted from their homes. Something that threw me by surprise today, I saw a video of our governor, because Arizona is a stand your ground state. And so she felt the need to remind people, like, you have every right to use your weapons if you think you're getting abducted by an a masked individual, they were trying to frame it like, are you suggesting that people go around shooting ICE officers? And it's like, well, if you're not willing to identify yourself, what choice are you leaving us? So it's nice to see people putting that fear and that pressure on ICE. If you're gonna have the audacity to kidnap people, then at least show your freaking face. So it's a lot what's going on in Minneapolis, and I do commend the people that are out there. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats, so it's not like I can hop on a plane and go be on the front lines only because I can't risk getting arrested and then having no one around to take care of my animals. It's just not something that I'm willing to risk, and not just anyone can do that. I have a reactive pit bull, so it's a tall task. But I definitely commend the people that are out there on the front lines, whether or not they're content farming or they're genuinely just doing it. The awareness is being brought, you know. I know. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, same. I think I did a little video the other day, but actually I have a friend that watches the show, Hannah. So shout out to Hannah if she sees this, whether on live or recording. But she's actually in Minneapolis and
Mhm.
sent me videos of her at the Whipple building where ICE is seated, and she gave me a little bit of information where where there was a man that was running away from ICE near the Whipple building. He was so afraid he jumped into a person's van, like a random person's van, to try to get away from ICE. And the person in the van got out and ultimately let ICE in some way like take this person, or at least throw them down, arrest them, etc. Because they said literally verbatim, "I don't want to be Renee Good." Like they said that like out loud in the pub, which is like totally understandable, right? Like I'm not saying this to, and then that same guy um the same guy that happened to ended up being one of the people that they arrested and are throwing the book at from the quote like church riots, like that happened like a few days after in Minneapolis. So like to say that like this is influencer reporter type guy that I have like shitted on his opinions over and over again. He was insufferable during the Kamala Harris campaign, all this kind of stuff. I see nothing but him driving around and harassing ICE agents at all hours of the day. And it's like, you know what? This shows that this isn't completely ideological between different people. It's just like people that are willing, have humanity, are willing to go on the ground and do this. So it's like, you see some people that you're
Mhm.
surprised at really going out there and doing good work. Like I saw that and I was like, am I really like stoked and like cheering on this guy that I was like shitting on incessantly and everyone I knew was shitting on incessantly during the Harris campaign? And it's like, yeah, because it's not about electoral politics, right? It's like about basic humanity. And like you said, whether someone's doing it, they're kind of building a public profile on it, or there's someone like my friend I just talked about that like nobody isn't putting these videos even online, sent them to me for me to do some things with. That they're just out there because
Mhm.
like this is so fucked up. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I do think that's the little like, I don't want to say I have hope in it because I don't see people in power that could have anything real to kind of push back on these sorts of things doing very much, kind of regardless of political ideology. But I am like encouraged by people that, regardless of what I think of some of the things that they've said publicly, that are really like, fuck this. I'm going out there and harassing these people. I'm blowing whistles in their faces. They throw a pepper ball at me. I'm going to go right back at them and like keep filming, like following them bumper to bumper every step of the way. I think it does show that, for all intents and purposes, it's just about like integrity. Like there are a lot of people out there that I might disagree with that at the end of the day are really, really, really wanting to just not see people fucking dragged into vans like some sort of dystopian movie, or like 1930, or more connectedly like the
Right.
West Bank in Palestine, right? Like it's sort of like it's a weird moment to see these sorts of parallels going on all at the same time, much like you were talking about with the journalists in the West. I think it was in the West Bank earlier today, including one from CBS, which CBS then used the Israel line defending why they killed their own journalist. But you're seeing a lot of parallels now. You know what I mean? Like you've been someone that's been paying attention to Gaza a lot, and speaking about this much more than a lot of other people, I would say, that are in the sort of space of activism that you do. Do you also see those kind of parallels? I'm actually having someone on the show soon that's going to talk about the actual like connections between the IDF and ICE. But like from your perspective, do you kind of see that kind of like occupation connection between like what they're trying to do in
Well,
Minneapolis and some
yeah,
places and kind of what we see overseas at the same time? Like it
they
feels
don't want
very
us
almost
documenting their
not one to one,
crimes.
obviously, but yeah.
There's there's a lot of parallels, but for me, it's the justification of the violence. I don't know, there's so much to talk about, but I think something that gets me is, like with the IDF, they kill innocent civilians under the guise of trying to attack Hamas, right? So they can justify bombing a hospital because Hamas is hiding underneath it. And then with ICE, they're kidnapping people and then they're saying, well, we're removing criminals. But you're kidnapping people that were like on their way to school, on their way to work, on their way to doctor's appointments. So, like, you're kidnapping people that aren't even actively committing crimes in the moment. So, how can you justify, people that are just trying to be productive members of society being ripped away and then, put in cages?
Yeah, and well, and even the idea, like I was watching some different news footage today and yesterday of one of the heads of ICE, or head of ICE, Bovino, I think is his name, just talking about like that they are only going after violent criminals, and like again, I would say that you still have to go through like court processes, because what does that mean that they're violent criminals? I don't, it's again a surface level bullshit argument to begin with. But it's like you shot a 37-year-old white woman with kids in the face after she dropped off her child at school. Like this is not, there's no justification for this. And I guess like to get into a little bit what we're going to first, I guess I'll bring up the politicians related to this, and then kind of get into a little bit what we're going to talk about as far as integrity of people that talk about these things as well. But like I find it very I don't know. Like it's been very eye opening, even though I shouldn't. It's one of those things I'm constantly surprised that I'm still surprised by these things, of the sort of liberal spin on both Jacob Frey and Tim Walz, of them coming out and giving some speeches, Frey giving like a speech that says, get the fuck out, that kind of deal. And then when they're interviewed more in depth on it, they're like, well, we're not actually going to arrest them, even though technically we could. Tim Walz says he's going to bring in the National Guard, but it actually seems like that's more to quell protesters than it is to go after ICE. Anyone that also, I think, thinks that the state is going to go after the state is kind of like in a bubble, in a fantasy world. So what do you think of like the it could just it seems like in your state someone actually had like a real response, with just like, you got the Second Amendment, it's time to fucking use it. But like in these instances it seems like they're trying to say they're against these things, and then they put out very mealy mouthed answers that are just like not for the moment. Like like I think Tim Walz put out another thing just the other day that was like, come to Minnesota and see how great our communities are. It's like, buddy, that is not what this is. Like this is like the
Yeah.
Fourth Reich, and you're like, but if you see us, maybe we'll all be happy together. I just, it's maddening. And I've seen a lot of like liberal outlets, whether it's independent, commentators, or more mainstream media, MS Now or whatever it's called, and everything else, like commending these people for their harsh words, when in reality they're doing nothing.
Yeah,
And
I
they're
mean,
openly
the
saying when they're
Democrats are
interviewed
essentially
in
just
detail that they're
writing
going
like
to do
strongly
nothing.
worded
You know what I
emails,
mean?
right? And acting like that's impactful. I watched an interview with Katie Hobbs. Yeah. Yeah, I watched an interview with Katie Hobbs from
Another
Arizona,
letter.
and in an
Yeah.
interview, she was asked, ICE is going to have more of a presence in Arizona. Is there anything that you can do to stop it? And she's like, there's nothing we can do. And I just thought that was like the most bullshit answer versus Annalise Ortiz is from Arizona too, and she was like, "Well, what we can do is we can create like rapid response teams and have like, essentially a neighborhood watch type of thing, and we can all, have each other's backs." But to see Katie Hobbs roll over like that was completely disgusting.
Yeah, well, and it just is like, some things are not just for like clips for the internet, right? Like, I mean, we're both talking on a podcast that's going to go online, right? So I understand the sort of irony of that. But like the idea of like politicians going out and just like saying things that we want to hear, and then even not really doing that when there's a little bit of pushback. It's like you could actually do something. Like you don't have to just say words, and everything's not about like, it feels like
Mhm.
content brain on like government official level. Like it's insane. And to that point, I don't know if you saw too, but I think yeah, today, just a few hours ago, 7 Democrats like crossed the line and voted
It is.
with Republicans to fund. I think it gives a lot of people the credence to this sort of controlled opposition argument, that it's like there is no opposition within,
Yeah, it's kind of funny you bring that up
within
because right
politics
before I
at
hopped
all in
on,
this country,
I was
right?
actually just watching a TikTok because essentially there was one creator that I follow who, did bring awareness to it. And he went on to say there are 7 Democrats who voted in favor to fund ICE even more. But what he failed to point out was I think it was like 93 Democrats who voted against that. So what we need to do is uplift the people who voted against it and vote out the people who voted for it. So, timing matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that matters. I also am someone. I mean, this is more attributed to the Senate. I think, like, we could talk about this, like, in the context of like Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin back with the Build Back Better stuff in the Biden days. But I am someone that, like, you could tell me I'm dumb, and that's okay. You're allowed to do that. But that I do think that, like, if these 7 didn't do it, if these particular people didn't, there would be
Yeah.
another 1 or 2 that would step up to make sure that this still went through. Because ultimately, they don't want some of these bills to not pass so that way certain things are held up. They didn't really want certain funding things to not go through. They don't want this to be another battle of funding and things of that nature. I mean, like, Jeffries had just flipped the other day, similar to a Schumer type fashion with passing the bill
Mhm.
to bring the to end the government shutdown. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm not one of these like there's nothing we can do electorally people, but I'm like on the brink there some days, I think. And I do think, like, it's a little more problematic than just
Mhm.
7, right? I think that's fair to say. I think it's like an institutional issue. But I do agree with you. I think there's a lot of people that stood up against this. I think there's a lot of people outside of like the most progressive realm that are like, this is fucked up. They might not say abolish ICE, which I think should be the moderate position, but they were absolutely not going to vote for funding this. So that is fair. And I think that is a good point to, like, people from the squad or different
Mhm.
progressive folks, Maxwell Frost and all these different people. They've been doing good work on making sure that
Right.
we try our best for this to not go through, but it still did ultimately, right? Well, that kind of goes into a little bit, kind of what we're talking about here goes into a little bit of what I wanted to talk to you about at large, which we could still probably kind of ebb and flow this into the conversations we're having about the most important topics. But I do think, like, there's a little bit of a connection with all of this and what I'd initially messaged you about coming on with, which is sort of the lack of what I often call in this space of, as someone that doesn't have like a very massive platform at all, but, like, I think a lot of people that have bigger platforms similar in the vein of yourself or larger or whatever, we've talked about some of these things through messages and stuff like that, of like the sort of lack of integrity on the liberal end of things when it comes to political commentary,
Mhm.
when it comes to online activism or activism in general, on the ground, whether it be like this tour that follow on around TPUSA or different big content creators. Like, what is your sense of someone? I want to ask this more broadly, and then I'll get into a few things I want to talk to you about with this. But what is your sense overall with, like, this sort of space and how it's been going, both kind of coming from 2024, which there was a lot of people that were putting on blinders when it came to the Harris campaign, when it came to Biden in general losing, and then kind of where that's gone now. Like, what's your sense of where a lot of these bigger, whether it's, I could throw some names out there, I don't always do this, but like Olivia Giuliana or Gene Withers or like that Unfuck America tour, a bunch of these different people and their different iterations. What is your sense of, like, where do these people come from, why they have massive platforms, and what the problems might be of some of, like, the bigger names in liberal or pseudo progressive, like,
Honestly, I can't
online
really speak
commentary
to,
or
like,
activist
who gave these
spaces?
people platforms to begin with, but what I can say is that they
I got
repeat these
my
very generalized, like,
guesses,
democratic
right? But yeah,
talking
sorry.
points, but, something that I keep seeing brought up over and over again on the internet is how, like, the Democratic Party was created to stop people from essentially wanting to take down, like, the current way our government runs, right? So it's really just made to cater to the Republican Party. And you can see that, like, with like the Unfuck America tour people, they are more aligned with people like the older millennial than they are to anyone to the left of them. So you'll see them cozy up with Republicans. There's a reason why they miss Charlie Kirk and they hate people like Hassan because they are fascists. And like, just because you don't outwardly support fascism doesn't mean that you don't do it day to day with your support for capitalism, for example. So these people are all capitalists at the end of the day. They vote in favor of the exploitation of, you know, poorer people. It's a whole thing, but they're grifters on both sides. They have no backbones. They refuse to condemn Democrats. They look the other way when there are Democrats. Like, I guarantee you, they will not be talking about the Democrats that voted to fund ICE. They won't be talking about the fact that every Democrat prior to this current term funded ICE more than the previous term. So, like, were things going to be that different? Maybe there'd be like a smidge less racism, but I don't think things were going to be that different for this country. We would still be funding Israel and there would still be mass deportations.
Yes, right. Like that's the thing that people like when you point that out. They tell you that you're like helping the Republican Party somehow by pointing out facts. But like it is true that there was like mass deportations and like violent deportations under Biden, certainly under Obama, which everyone knows of the nickname, deporter in chief. But like it's not to say things haven't extremely escalated. I think like that's something you have to point out, right? Like things are horrific now. There's no question that the Trump administration has like supremely escalated things,
Mhm.
if not made sure that they're like an extreme spectacle, right? Like I think one thing the Democrats have done well, and Democratic pundits such as like some of the ones I've named off, or you could probably rail off a million of them as well that we know what we're talking about here, is that like they're good at like skewing the narrative when they're in office to make it seem like this is no longer that big of an issue. We're just doing an immigration enforcement. There's no longer kids in cages. There's people in facilities,
Mhm.
right? Like it's that sort of like washing of language when it's like, no, these things are actually still happening. Like I remember when there were images that came out during the first Trump administration of horrific conditions of children in cages and all these different things being shared around, and then it turned out that those images were taken under Obama, and Republicans acted like that was a gotcha, and
Yeah,
Democrats
like
stopped talking about it,
regardless
and it
of
was like,
who is in
no, the point is
power.
this is bad. The point is yeah, like it's like called having fucking principles, right? Like it's not a hard concept to have if again
Yeah.
you're not just an opportunist and not just a partisan. So yeah, one thing I wanted to like, because I know you've had a little bit of a backstory with the some things I've seen online with like the unfuck America thing, and like I think it's like a big. The only reason why I bring this up, I'm not trying to like have this conversation just to shit on specific people, although that's fun. But like what I did know. One other thing about this was, yeah, there was some of the racism controversies which I didn't like know too much about, because again I don't follow these things as closely as some other people might, but like I didn't realize that they literally had like destiny like so ingrained
Quite
in like
literally.
the promotion of this, who's like literally a sexual predator. They had, and then that they also, this is one other thing I was looking into a little bit more, but that they took it was over 40% of their total expenditures as of August 2025 were given to the organizers. So they had raised a total of $723,000. They had a just under $700,000 in expenses, and almost 300,000 of that was given to the organizers, which I was told this was something they were trying to do to combat TPUSA, that this was supposed to be like a way that they're doing voter registration, which again, I have my qualms about people that just go out to just like be like, all right, here you go, try to vote because you'll vote Democrat, as opposed to talking about the issues and
Mhm.
actually getting people over to your side and not just doing debate slop and all that kind of stuff. But that's a different conversation. But like, the defense of this, of people online, especially in younger audiences, it's all over the place. But like a lot of people were really upset that people were critiquing this. And I found it kind of fascinating to look into it, and just like finding a quick article showing just like, if this was any other organization, like if this was somebody raising money for
Serious
a
charges.
candidate, they might even face like charges or at least some sort of suing. Yeah, so it just kind of really shows the
And
grifting level to a
the way
whole
that you know
different
that they
degree,
know
right?
they're in the wrong is because they felt the need to lie and say that they don't take any of the money that they make from this. When there was literally proof from the FEC that in September, Z paid herself $14,000. She's probably paid herself even more since then. I haven't looked into it, but the internet, that information is publicly available. So if there's nothing wrong with paying yourself for the passion project that you have, then why lie about it?
Yeah, pretty simple, right? Like, especially when you're trying to like, my whole thing about this was, and I saw like, and again, you still see, I don't know why I check online forums. It just gives me an aneurysm. But like, I still see people defending this to that degree that this is a counter to this massive right wing ecosystem, which has collapsed to
Mhm.
a large degree since September of this year, following Charlie Kirk and everything. But like, it's like it wasn't going to be that, like, because I also think like there's a conversation to be had that a lot of people don't want to face in left wing and progressive spaces of like, you're not going to be able to fight fire with this, because like TPUSA did not just get grassroots organizing funding from people that were into it. There's like massive big money influence going into this, and they
Mhm.
were basically aligned specifically with the Trump administration. Same as trying to go out there and crowdfund money. You have to find a different way to approach these things. And so trying to act like you can do like apples to apples in this situation when like, one apple's grown with like, human, growth hormones basically, and the other one can't be because you're not going to get billionaire money. It's sort of fascinating that they thought this was even sort of like a realistic expectation or something that people could believe could happen, when it's like, no, you have to like deprogram people from being attached to partisanship and actually into progressive values and actually work towards grassroots like activism and being into like
No,
specific
they're
things
not
to better working
progressive.
class
I think
people,
their
right? And it just
entire
doesn't seem
thing
like
is
it's
about
there at
click
all in a lot of
farming
these
for
spaces.
like an own for virality. I remember when I had gotten into it with the organizer of Unfuck America, and she was like, debate me, debate me, debate me. If we're on the same side, what the fuck is there to debate? Or are you admitting that we're not on the same fucking side? I saw the screenshots of her calling herself a light Republican, a Reagan type Republican. So, like, the person who's leading the charge isn't even progressive herself. You have liberals and Republicans airing on a reality TV series about the life of political. Yeah, I'm like, people are getting abducted from their
Oh my
fucking
god.
homes, and you are starring in a reality TV series about politics as if American politics isn't as unfucking serious as it already is. Like, we have a reality TV star in office. Nobody should be taking these individuals seriously on the left or the right. It's incredibly fucking tone deaf, and it's a bad look for the people who actually care about the shit that's going on in the world. And it just goes to show that, like, these are genuinely people who want
Yeah,
so
it's
bad to be in the
sorry, go ahead.
limelight, and like, no, you didn't have the talent to make it in Hollywood, or you couldn't even star on fucking PBS shows. So you take the next best thing, which is to be on Fox News, because you're still going to be on TV either way. And that's all they care about. I don't even know if they care about money that much. It's about fame to them, it's about attention.
Yeah, it's literally being addicted to the attention economy, right? Like, and to the extent that it's not about money, like I agree with you to some extent there, that like I think at the forefront it's becoming a viral sensation. Like literally on their
Hmm.
platform, that's what they brag about. They brag about that they have viral clips. It has nothing to do with like what sort of progressive candidate are you backing if you're going electoral politics? What sort of advocacy are you doing that's like benefiting working class people, young people, to where they will go out and, if you want them to vote, giving them a reason to vote, or kind of showing the disparity between the two parties if you want to go that route, or things of that nature. It's none of that. It's literally like an interview with yeah, the creator of the Unfuck America tour, her name's escaping me, Z, whatever it is. And it was like the entire thing was about being like virality, which was the point. And it's like I understand like that can work in a space of conservatism, or even like back in the a few years ago, maybe mainstay liberalism, but it's not going to work to get people to vote. Like if that's even what your stance is, and like I still think that's sort of a vapid thing in and of itself, just to get people to quote unquote vote Democrat. Like I think you have to have a bigger picture and a bigger vision than that. But even if that's your goal, you're not achieving that goal. You're chasing around a bigger organization and yelling at them with cheap microphones and like
And like
an
the
iPhone,
debate
and calling that
the
an
debate bro
activist
culture is
project. It's
so
like
stupid
wasting
because it's
people's
not
money
like
and
it
time.
changes people's minds. Like, the reason I'm not receptive to the idea of debating someone is because my views can't be compromised. You can't convince me that Charlie Kirk was a good person. You can't convince me that people shouldn't have universal health care. You can't convince me that housing shouldn't be a human right. Like, what is there to fucking debate? And it doesn't change anything. Well, that's end of rant. But
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. No, no. Like, no. You're fine. You're fine. I think, yeah, it's the whole thing of, and again, I know we're talking as people that like yap on the internet about these things, so I understand a little bit of a contradiction, but I think it's different enough that like, uh it's politics for the sake of aesthetics, right? It's politics as a spectacle where the point is the video, the point is the clicks, the point is people yelling at each other in comments, and the point isn't actually providing solutions or even pointing out hypocrisy or anything like that. It's solely for the state of like giving people the lowest common. This is why I talk about, like, this is the same thing, and this is why I don't want to just like shit on these individual people I've named, but it's kind of the same thing to me as like Jubilee, or like there's been these other things, or it's like what CBS is going to try to do soon, which is like Jubilee Light, where it's just like trying to farm stuff to where there's like 30-second clips, and that's all there is to activism and politics, and it gets massive audiences. But what is it ultimately doing? It's ultimately turning very serious issues into content and doing nothing more than like circumventing people doing anything, because they feel that if they watch a guy or a person or whoever state the thing that they state and own somebody else. This is how I've always felt about online debate culture in general. But like that's like it's like taking the space of doing things yourself, right? It's kind of like when I've seen people like share that they watched some revolutionary movie, like One Battle After Another or something else from farther back, and like share that around as if that's some like revolutionary championing. It's like, no, you just watch
and just
something.
because
Like that
someone
that
is
doesn't
good at
necessarily mean
debating, it
anything's
doesn't mean that
changed,
they're
you know?
right. You know, the purpose of a debate is to have a stance and then prove why you're right in your
Okay.
stance, but it's not to change minds. So, like, it's just not productive.
Yeah, I don't know. It's yeah. I said the Jubilee, like Jubilee is like the biggest example of that to me. Or like, again, I don't want to. I usually don't say people's names when I'm doing it here anyway. But like, it's like when I've seen like that guy Dean Withers show up on my feed or whatever, and he's just interviewing like, or having people call him that are like the dumbest people on the planet and like owning them, and it's like, but that's not doing anything. And you're not using your platform to actually call for abolishing ICE. You're not using your platform to raise money for people in Palestine. You're not, and you're not like critiquing. You don't have to do that. I'm not saying everyone has to be like Mr. or Mrs. or whatever activist, but like you do have to like treat issues as serious topics. Like you can't just you can't
Yeah,
just like feed people slop and call
and when
that
you
like a
come down
movement.
with such
You at least have to be
condescension, it
honest about what you're
alienates
doing,
people
you know?
versus bringing them in. And like, the purpose of my content is to call out hypocrisy, but also make the current affairs more digestible. You know, there are a lot of people who don't understand the linguistics behind, articles, or it's just too much. And so when you kind of break it down into like casual conversation, they're going to be more receptive to trying to learn about what's going on. And when you frame it in a way that conveys how much it impacts them, they're going to care a little bit more. But having a gotcha moment go viral isn't, it's just not politics. It's
Right,
theatrics.
right. It's again, it's more like drama than it is anything else, right? Like, and to that, yeah, theatrics is a better way to put it. To go to that a little more, like this was news a while back, but I still see it being pertinent today when I look up some of these big people in the kind of political activism space, or like people that have spoken at the DNC in the last like election cycle and stuff like that, that got this sort of, you know funding from basically democratic sort of operative PACs and stuff like that, which again, I'm not against. That happens everywhere. I'm not against people getting money to do commentary or to like get boost a profile or whatever necessarily. I think a lot of people get that from small dollar donations, or some people might get that from a funder or whatever, to whatever platform they do it, like Majority Report or whatever else that I watch. Like they get funds from people, it's fine. But like when you're getting funding from people and it explicitly says you can't cover certain things. You can't lambaste a certain politician or promote a certain politician. You can't talk about certain issues, namely Gaza, for a lot of these people. From the kind of course funding thing that I think Taylor Lorenz put out a couple months ago. That again, I still kind of see the ramifications with. I saw, like, I went through some of these people. I went through all of their profiles and tried to like look through what they had sort of talked about. No abolishing ICE. They'll talk about ICE. They don't use that term, right? They don't. They don't. You won't see them critique someone like Cory Booker for simply saying we need
Yeah.
to have more training and cameras on ICE when famously the guy that shot Renee Good was in there for a decade and was filming her while he did it. You don't see them critiquing any of these people that like say slap out of their mouth and then go ahead and don't protect people. Like what's kind of like your read on that, and where do you think like that pushes politics in the
Yeah,
age
I
of like the
mean,
attention
I
economy and
do
like
think it's a bigger deal
influencer
than the
culture?
people who are like, it's not a big deal and there are more important things going on in the world. I would say at this current point in time, absolutely, there are more important things going on than people who are getting paid to create content. But the issue behind that is they had daily, touch
Yeah,
bases where they have certain topics that they want them to talk about. And there are some of those creators who do speak against Israel, but I don't see them criticizing people like Jasmine Crockett or Hakeem Jeffries or Cory Booker or Gavin Newsom. In fact, a lot of them glaze Gavin Newsom, and they're really pushing this agenda that he's going to be the Democratic frontrunner for the next presidential election. And the same criticisms that we have against Donald Trump could be said about Gavin Newsom. Like, this is also someone who goes after younger women. This is also someone who had extramarital affairs. This is also someone who supports ICE, who supports Israel, and destroys homeless encampments. So I think we can do better. And these people should be using their platforms to demand better, but this is a very blue no matter who type of organization. And, kind of reeling it back to the point I make about political influencers grifting. Brian Tyler Cohen is one of the ringleaders of this whole chorus thing, and he has an IMDb profile. You can see his pictures from when he was trying to get into the acting space. So, is this someone that we really should be trusting, or who's pulling the strings behind his messaging?
yeah. It sounds similar to a certain like wannabe reality TV star actress, a female actor, a few years back, that we saw like videos of, and then all of a sudden now, she was married to a right wing podcaster who recently got killed, Erica Kirk. And then, next thing we know, you're seeing all these things of like them posturing themselves as something that they're not. It's like we have
Mhm.
we have video of you contradicting yourself in real time and nobody cares, right? Like it's that sort of thing where like, yeah, the Brian Donner Killer thing, that's crazy. I can't believe people like, I've seen Zateo work with the guy. I don't know why people still do it. It's not, he's not a genuine person. He's so smarmy too. It's just weird, but I digress. That's just me being an asshole. But like, yeah, I do think there's something to be said, especially on the Gavin Newsom thing. I am only seeing people talk about his sort of like Twitter performance, which is clearly by someone that worked for him, right? That's not him. People need to always remember that, including with people that we like. Like Bernie Sanders is not tweeting out the things that people love to get 100,000 likes. He's an 80-year-old plus man. He's not on Twitter giving you good clapbacks on like Trump. Like that's not what's happening. And we literally saw Gavin Newsom have on, of all people, Ben Shapiro on his podcast, to where Ben Shapiro got him to walk back saying that Renee Good's killing was state-sponsored terrorism. He also got him to say that he supports Israel and what's happening in Gaza is not a genocide. Gavin Newsom came out and said he would be against a billionaire tax. He said everything under the sun that's against what the literal base of the Democratic Party is, and yet a lot of these people will only share praise and even do like weird thirst things about him, which is he's a vampire. But like, like all these things are like terrifying to me of like what it feels like a like WWE kayfabe. Like it feels like everyone's living in like a pseudo real environment when it's like this is affecting people's lives. Like if you're not going to go after the things that are helping the working class or helping the democratic base that the democratic base wants, which we know people want to abolish ICE, people don't want people in Gaza to be obliterated, certainly don't want the new Gaza plan to go through, and all these different things. Like, it's like, what do you even think you're building or accomplishing by trying to manufacture consent for this stuff? It's just like, at a certain point, you're speaking to a very small percentage of partisan
Mhm.
liberals, a lot of times probably people that are much older than they think they are, and not like getting people
Yeah.
involved
And Gavin
that could
Newsom
actually make any
also is
meaningful
not very
change,
like
you know?
pro women. He actually voted in favor of cutting healthcare services for, I want to say it was like menopause treatments and services that would. Oh, yeah, I was looking into, like, all the reasons
Oh,
why people
Jesus, I
should
didn't
not
even know
like
that.
him. Even Halle Berry called him out regarding that. So, yeah, there's a lot of reasons to not glaze him, but he's a mediocre
Wow.
white man, so a majority of the public is gonna put him on a pedestal, so that's nice. But, I mean, he's essentially a Republican that slapped a D next to his name. I mean, there's a reason why his kids are big fans of Charlie Kirk. Who knows what kind of rhetoric he's teaching them, you know, behind closed doors.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to a bigger picture beyond him of just like what people with sort of big platforms and influence are willing to put their name or their neck out there for, right? Like they're not going to push some sort of interesting advocate for, like the fact that none of these people will even push. He's not even like an overly outsider person, but like in the current stage, like push Rokana as an example. That's not like some like Bernie super far left. He literally like has done fundraisers with like Silicon Valley technocrats. Like this guy is not like some like massive like crazy socialist, but has the spotlight, knows what he's doing, is like working across the aisle for Epstein files, like calls for billionaire tax, has like very common sense things that like a lot of popular that would be very popular with a lot of Americans and independents as well. And yet you're going to push for the guy that like
Mhm.
most progressives in California fucking hate. Like there's a very small constituency that like love Gavin Newsom, and half of them aren't in his fucking state. So like the idea that he would win, I mean, I think almost unfortunately in some ways almost any Democrat may win in 2028. But the fact, like the idea that he wouldn't then in 4 years make
Yeah.
sure another Republican gets in for 8 years is like astounding. It's just like such like a failure of imagination, I guess, when it comes to politics. Like, and I don't know why that is, other than people just following horse race stuff only and not principles
Yeah, I don't know
and like a
why
sort of
people
vision
aren't
of what would be good for
more
people,
in
you know?
favor of, like, true progressives. So another person from the Unfuck America tour, Mercedes Chandler, she had posted on Threads, and I thought that this was a very telling thing. So basically, I'm reading it off my phone, but someone had tweeted or they posted on Threads, "I'm a simple man. I hate MAGA, I hate fascists, I hate Marxists, and I hate communists." And Mercedes said, "Add socialism to this list and it's perfect." And then I was like, "Damn, like, did none of them advocate for Zohran Mamdani? They don't want progressives. These are not progressive people."
No, I mean, no. What they're trying, like to me, what they're trying to do in these spaces, whether it's the Unfuck America people, like I said, Olivia Giuliano is one that I see the most. Like I said, spoke at the DNC, and only like is it's crazy. She's only like out there promoting the most
Mhm.
like corporate centrist, do nothing Democrats ever. While not saying any statements on any principled like things going
Oh,
on in
wait,
the world.
she
Yeah,
supported the kidnapping of Maduro and
it's crazy.
invading Venezuela.
And that's the other thing I was gonna say. That's in some of my notes. I haven't been looking at them at all. That's why I've been rambling so much. But like her and then a few other people, like the best you could get from these sorts of people with these massive platforms of millions of followers in some cases, some that have again spoken at the DNC, the whole nine yards, is well, Maduro is a terrible dictator, and it's good he's out, but this was bad the way we did it. Like, it's basically like we should have done regime change a different way. And it's like, what would you call it if China came and abducted like Melania and Donald Trump? Like, I mean, I would be stoked about it, but like, I mean, I think a lot of people would justifiably view that as like, I'm half joking there, but like, as like regime change and a horrific thing to do because it would destabilize a country
Yeah.
regardless of what's going on in that country or how good of a leader that is. And first and foremost,
invading a country, bombing them, killing 80 plus people, and taking a leader is
So
bad.
the
I'm going to
problem
go out
is,
there
like,
with a brave statement and say that's
would
bad,
I
you
would
know,
be
and
perfectly
they can't do
content
that without, you know.
with with the idea of Trump and Melania being abducted, but the problem is that yeah, it's a terrifying thought
That's getting clipped. No, I'm
that
just
someone
kidding.
could come into your country and just take your president and their wife. Like, in any other circumstance, I'd be like, "This is actually fucking terrifying. It's a threat to your sovereignty." And I think that that's the problem at the end of the day is, like, it should be on us Americans to impeach him, to get him out of office, you know, but that's not for any other country to decide, and other countries deserve the same respect.
Yeah, it's really that simple, right? Like it's like the simplest way to put it is like, would you want this to happen to you? And if they go, yeah, it's like, well, then you're kind of fucking stupid. But like, you know, like I mean, like, yeah, it's a simple aspect of like this is a
Mhm.
sovereign country. You shouldn't do this. Boom, done. Because also the idea that whether you're Biden, Obama, or Trump, the idea that any of these people did less harm to the world than Nicolas Maduro is insane. Like, we have blown up millions of people under each of these administrations. We have been the global terrorist organization or you know been the biggest
Dude,
terrorizer
America is
to
so
the most people on the
genocidal, and if
planet
we're not
in
doing
my
it
lifetime
directly, we're doing it
since 2001 at
indirectly
the very
via who we
least,
fund.
you know. Right. So this idea that like we need to get Maduro because he's a gangster, it's like, motherfucker, look in the mirror. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is insane that we kind of have these principles or we even have this discourse to begin with. But yeah, I saw, yeah, what was
She
it that
said,
she said, my
"I'm
only
glad that
I
he
screenshotted it. She
was
said,
kidnapped and that she just wished it had happened
I'm
sooner."
yeah, to quote specifically, I'm not mad about Maduro being arrested. I'm mad it didn't happen sooner. Which, by the way, this was not an ICC um warrant like what we have for Netanyahu that has spoken
Yeah,
multiple
we
times
will
in the
send him
United
foreign
States
arms.
during both Biden and Trump. This is an American warrant. You know, it's like, all right, let's have China put out one for like racketeering on Trump and come get him,
Mhm.
right? Like it's like, or Biden, if you want to throw that out there for liberals. It's like it's just so insane, the lack of like self-awareness. It's like we just live in such a bubble. It's insane. Um well, Kim, thanks for breaking down a lot of these things with me. Um I do want to ask, like, on a, like kind of a positive note for yourself as someone that's in a similar space as a lot of these people. Um, what do you kind of view? What do you kind of view like the way that this sort of commentary, you know, whether it's, you know, through a lot of like more short form things or through social media, what do you think is the what's the way that people can do it that benefits people as opposed to what we were just talking about that hindrances it or like kind of makes it surface level and sort of slot for politics as aesthetics? And what kind of like is something that people should look out for as listeners or people that consume social media that like would
Authentic.
help them discern whether or not someone's being, you know, coming from a place of integrity or coming from a
Yeah,
place
I
of
think that
authenticity
I
or
mean, something that I would
inauthenticity?
pay attention to is if you see someone's content and you think that you like it, but you can't gauge whether or not they're genuine in their takes, is go look at their profile and see if their videos are exactly a minute long. That should tell you everything you need to know, right? You go watch Aaron Parnas's videos, they are exactly 1 minute and 1 second long. That's a pretty strong indicator, but I would look for people who are willing to call out the left and the right. Obviously, I call out the right more than the left, but I want people to feel comfortable having criticisms for the party that they expect more from. But yeah, that would be my biggest thing, or, you know, pay attention to people who only call out the low-hanging fruit, right? Because that's just like easy virality slam dunks. But yeah, the checking if a video is exactly a minute long is a big tell.